Good morning. So, there's a lot that I could talk about when it comes to personality types and traits and the whole philosophy of, you know, discovering what the most common factors are cross culturally that can be applied to explain the variability or the differences amongst people, amongst ourselves, within ourselves. And so, um, what I want to share today is just a little bit about why I believe as a coach in understanding yourself via some of the more sound personality factors and assessments is it's a critical starting point for you to be for you to reveal about yourself so that you can start to see and clearly be able to piece the puzzle pieces together for how you interact with other people. Because once you see it for yourself, you can really start seeing it for other people. And you can create profiles. You can start to experiment off a foundation of understanding. It's a really important thing to think about. So, I guess one of the things that I want to try to explain is that no assessment, on personality traits or any other unifactored analysis is going to be the entire picture or the entire story of who you are. That's a core principle of what we believe at Unified Solutions. I've been saying this for years, for decades, that people get what's called destination disease. If I can only just do this, if I only had that, if I only knew where I landed on the ENTJ, INTF, Myers-Briggs, all that kind of stuff, then I can go ahead and be everything and do everything better. That is woefully untrue. And it's also, in my estimation, a disease to think that. Because then we start hiding behind these walls, these categorizations. And no one of those things is going to tell anyone the full picture. You're much bigger. You're much more than those one assessments. Enough of that. Second thing, factor analysis is a statistical way to really narrow down and converge upon the correlating factors that make descriptive traits, things that can describe how people are. It really separates those out into the real key differences. And there's been a convergence across many different studies. I think we're coming into the 1990s. So by the time I was 10, the psychological domains out there doing a lot of studies and experiments have converged on five factors, five descriptors that they've narrowed in on to say, hey, these are the ones that are most descriptive of the variances across individuals, and that seem to keep popping up over and over again across time, across culture, and across generations. And so that's from a probability and statistics standpoint. Factor analysis is is one of the best statistical ways to kind of narrow down and clean up out of thousands of descriptors and adjectives of people and personality types and traits to converge on the top ones, the ones that are truly different. They're not different ways of saying the same thing. They are truly different adjectives and descriptors. So that's what the five factor model, you might have heard it called. That is certainly, to me, one of the more profound and sound assessments out there. So at Unified Solutions, we actually partner with a company to provide a Big Five personality assessment, one that can be used and gives you really insightful detail about yourself and where you fall in that continuum. And it's not like a type assessment, which is basically saying, hey, you are one way or you're the other. You're either intuition or thinking, right? You're not both. This one is much more of a spectrum, and it gives you a kind of a comparative, a relative estimate. Where do you fall on the scale, right? Compared to thousands of other people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, depending on the data bank. How do you fit in, right? So it gives you a kind of a good way to situate yourself in the world, in the known world, compared to other people. Where do you fall? I think that's much more useful, and also counters that thing that I said in the beginning about destination disease for people, because just because you're extroverted in one situation doesn't mean you're extroverted in all situations, right? And by extroverted, I mean, assertive or enthusiastic, right? And I don't just mean, how do you recharge? So the definitional alignment here is going to be something that you're going to get once you use some of these more sound assessments, because they're not going to lock you into just one way. Hey, wearing orange, I could take one of those down a day. Not just kidding. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is a major factor to understanding the importance of it. Also, back to the whole, it's not the entirety of who you are, but it's a great part of your inner house to turn the lights on and to clean up, to get some furniture in there, hang the wall, hang the picture frames on the wall at the right height, the right distance from each other. Like, can you imagine having your house disorganized? Do you know what that feels like? Some of you don't care. Some people are temperamentally, lower in orderliness, and so, it might not bother you as much. But therein lies the rub. Knowing how much or how little something affects you is it's a awareness that it's hard to say is unvaluable, because then once you know that and you can see that, you can start to see how others obviously differ from you and why. More importantly, why. So other things that make up who you are, your total stack of experiences, the phenotype that was emphasized or accelerated or, attenuated because of your genetic, or your personality type predispositions, right? Because of, she's shaking this there, because of your natural wirings, your experiences, the sequence of your experiences will have been different. If you're out of 100 people, let's say, if you're 99 out of 100, more agreeable than 99 of them, and that means more polite and more compassionate, right? And you can measure each of those factors. And you started out that way, then your experiences are going to reciprocate that to you, and maybe the painful moments in your life are emphasized when they were due to that agreeable factor. It's similar to genotype. So if your genetic markers and your DNA and mRNA creates proteins, and those proteins, certain ones are created more in your body than others. That knowledge of how the instructions in your body create the words and the sequences and the expressions in your life, that knowledge is powerful. I would say similar to genetics, that understanding has been aloof, escaping most people, most of society, not just us individuals. I mean, mankind, for a long time. We've just made some major breakthroughs this past year. Not going to get into that, but that's very exciting from the DNA, from the genetic perspective, from the ability to model and map who we are, how we are, and how the genetics instruct all of this, right? All of this, some of this. Some of this is just, bad luck. So anyway, I'm saying this because at Unified Solutions, I'll be talking more about this on our other channel, Short Solutions, where I really want to get into specifics. I really want to talk about, different personality combinations and maybe even what each personality trait looks like in the workplace environment versus at home. These ideas, these thoughts, and some of this intelligence, I would call it, right? Because it's intelligence to finally know how you're wired. I would love to give examples of how I've seen this expressed and how they interact and come out, perhaps in my own experiences. But I also have plenty of experiences of, people who have become quite aware of who they are and how they are and why they are. And they are strategic leaders who are extremely strategic about how those interact with others. And the ones that are more aware and apply this more sometimes innately, or get it to a point where it's not something that has to become so heady. It's not a head knowledge, but it's like a heart knowledge. It's a understanding, a certain understanding that basically breeds wisdom. And then I think that would be powerful for many of us. So more to come on that. If you have any interest in understanding your personality or the personality of others, or understanding how to maybe even rank order the different assessments that are out there, because there are plenty and some are quite powerful. I don't discriminate on any of them, but I do rank. I do think about the hierarchy of validity. And I definitely think as you're doing your self-discovery and you're on that journey of understanding and maybe improving specific areas of your life or relationships or interactions at work or in business, as you're developing a team, this becomes ever more important. And the better you know it, the more successful you're probably going to be. So like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to having these conversations. Thank you much. I hope you have a great and powerful day. Take care.